Welcome to our update. Let's call it like that, right? Or sort of more of a post-eclipse coming out of the portal and looking at, what's next, what we can do with the energies that are coming after that. And according to some people, these eclipse energies, they kind of last up to 6 months. So even if nothing happened nothing happened, lots of things happened during this particular, 2 weeks period. Obviously, we are still way into the energy itself, and it's kind of dragging along as a tail for the next 6 months. So I want to talk to you about that specifically in terms of, obviously I know some things were shifting majorly in your life, and I see even in some my clients' lives, they had some major shifts happening. And that was like a very funny, not funny, but just to observe that thing where, it has been such a struggle before, where, you're almost in that place where I'm like, okay, I'm giving up, I'm throwing in the towel, I'm putting all this effort, nothing is moving, nothing is changing, I'm going mental, I don't know what to do. And in a way, it brings that surrender where it's like, okay, well, there's nothing else to do, sit here and rest, and maybe we, in order to receive something, sometimes you don't need to hustle and struggle and be in that creative, motivated mode. Sometimes you just need to let things happen, and that surrender in a way. So I see these things going on. Once we said, okay, let's do this live yesterday, I was looking back in the last 3-4 sort of weeks in my personal sort of life as well, and I want to touch on what happened there. And also some people said that, after the eclipse, especially the second one, this lunar one that we just passed as well, that was super, super heavy. However, now it's that moment, even weeks later, now it's that moment of okay, the light in the tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel, it's kind of, motivation is coming back, and it's kind of the energy surge is coming back into the body. So as if you were restrained and kind of sat there as there is nothing you can do. Sit here and wait it out. And now here is your energy. Go and create, go and do things, go and. So it's all these interesting things that we are noticing. And I really want to hear what you have to say about these energies sort of going forward.
Looking back, I had to laugh about everything that we kind of talked about. And it was one thing is to talk about it, and a totally different thing is to experience it. So I just really want to, number one, share this, that everything, as you described this whole past 3 weeks that we have gone through, it was very true for me as well. And yes, I totally agree that there's a point where you realize that there are moments where there is nothing that can be done and you just need to wait. And so here is one of my questions that I also wanted to ask you. What are the resources that you use? What are some kind of dynamics, or, how do you help yourself when these things happen? I would really like to know, and I will share what I have been doing. So one of my great go-to tools when it comes to these moments of great confusion and frustration and not knowing and really just being there and feeling a little bit blocked is, and really it's a personal one, but for me is crafts. Every time that I find myself in this dynamic, I know that I need to shift my focus in a way that I have no space to think and rethink and, you know, the same things over and over again, because I find myself in a loop where I cannot find a solution at the moment. So it's really about very consciously taking away the focus into something totally different. And what works for me, and this is why I wanted to share, because it's really, really different for everyone. And I know that for some people it really has to do with movement and like really moving the energy, shaking the energy inside. But what really, really helps for me is crafts. So I am not someone, and you know, I'm not someone who does this all the time. It's really like this, when I'm into it, I'm only doing it, and then it stops. And it's really this creative moments, that like this creative push that sometimes comes, and then I have to ride those waves. So I will be like really honest with you, or I survived these past 3 weeks because I went into crafting like there's no tomorrow. And seeing that there's this so much that we can create and so much beauty that we can create, you know, and using our hands, that was also a very, very important thing. So just really being in my body, because whenever you do this kind of manual things, you really need to use your body and you make new connections. So it was all about that for me. But it really, craft really saved my, well, I don't want to say big word like my life, but really my well-being for sure. My mental well-being is really helped by craft. So this is one of the tools that I really wanted to share. And I would like to hear how you deal with these moments.
Yeah, I mean, crafts, definitely. I'm one of those. And I used to do lots of crafts before, but now, what you said about working with your hands, and it's like working with your hands, but also it requires focus, right? So it can be, once, like you said, if you do it all the time, if you're a crafty person and you are doing things with your hands all the time, it can be a very meditative practice, right? Because it becomes kind of like almost automatic, you know? However, if you don't do it all the time and you just go for it in special moments when you feel called, or when you like, okay, I need to shift my focus, because if I'm staying in this loop, I'm just, you know, spiraling. I allowed myself to spiral a little bit this last couple of weeks. Because I was kind of like interested, like, you know, where's the bottom? But yeah, so I'm not sure if that was the best idea ever. But anyway, I'm here. But yeah, so the focus, shifting focus, and obviously working with your hands. So energetically, we know, like maybe from yoga and things like that, right? Like mudras and all these things that we do with our hands that nowadays we don't anymore, right? So everything is touch, 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 touch. But there is no like actual movement of the fingers, even what we had with writing and things like that. Like, who writes with a pen these days? Like, very few people, right? So yeah, so I think you've chosen, I did some crafting too. So it's like all these things, you know, that comes up. And we were talking about last time, kind of going inwards, right? So this, I felt like, for me was like, I don't know, like a vacuum cleaner, sort of like pulling me into like the dirt and the dust and the rest of it, the mud and the whole thing. And yeah, as you know, the beacon of positivity didn't leave, but at the same time, you know, things that surface back up, and you know, it's always that moment where you think like, I've dealt with it, like, you know, I'm over it. It's like, you know, I did the healing over that, and like, it's all good. Some things were like not so fast, you know, and what I really noticed, like, it was really, I think for me was on like that very critical voice was coming up again, and it was like sometimes, you know, like when you allow yourself just to sort of spiral, because I allowed myself to spiral because I knew like it will end. It's not like you know, there is no end and I'm just gonna be in the space forever. I was more of a curious, the intention was more curious, but what I realized is like, gosh, is it even my voice that I hear? And like that was the question. It's like, where is this coming from? Like this kind of dialogue, this kind of talk, self-talk, where like even probably in my like teenage years I wasn't like so self-critical as this was coming up now, and it was just like to the point of like, you know, crying my eyes out. Like I'm getting emotional now, but it's like crying your eyes out because like all you're getting is like you are a horrible person, like, you know, it's like that kind of idea where it's like, oh my God, I need to go and like apologize for the whole world because like I'm just the most horrible person on earth. And it's like, and then you're like, I'm not. But like, you know, like the voice is telling you this, and it's like, oh, okay, so whether, you know, it felt a bit like I know it's part of me, but whether it's like so suppressed part where it's just like, okay, I want to be seen, I want to be like expressed, and I don't give a shit about anyone else. You know, it's like that what we were touching on before, like the Scorpion season starting, and like I said, I don't know much about astrology, but I think it's significant that my moon is in Scorpio, you know, so it's like, okay, there is that very, very toxic part of me, and it can be very damaging. And obviously, you know, you have like that balance going on, but at this point, in this couple of weeks, it was like really the surge of it, kind of, yeah, all that toxicity is still here. It didn't go anywhere. Hello, like you suppressed me, but yeah, now I'm gonna like show what I'm all about, and I'm gonna make you suffer in the meantime. And I was like, okay, let's see. So I'm just feeling now like, and that manifested in the ways of like, for me, manifested more in health issues. So certain pains coming back, certain like issues that, you know, were a bit like, oh, okay, I'll deal with it later, is like, no, now, deal with it now, you know. So I'm gonna make you so uncomfortable, so you're gonna move, you know, and you're gonna do this, and you're gonna achieve that, and like all that kind of like in a way very negative, but at the same time, if you look even deeper, it's like, okay, it's a kick in the butt. You know, like you sat here, you dealt with lots of things, but here is another layer. Yeah. And yeah, for me, it looked like very on the feminine kind of side. It was lots of kind of things that, lots of awareness that really shifted my understanding in a way that something that I thought was solid before is not anymore. So it's like, okay, more things to discover and look at, and things where I thought like, okay, like that's for sure, I'm right about that. Not so sure about it now. So it's like a lot of chaos, but in a way, yeah, didn't have sort of major, you know, shifts in terms of like what's happening like in my immediate outside reality that looks kind of more or less the same, but the turmoil was really within, you know, and in terms of like health issues that showed up again, you know. So that's that. In terms how I dealt with it, yeah, just a lot of compassion and lots of curiosity, crying, lots of crying, lots of yeah, I did a bit of crafting because that brings joy in any way, you know, so made some candles and you know, like it was funny because like my husband just finished a project that he was like sort of finishing in the meantime during all these eclipses, which is another sort of light feature that he made, and is like, that's just so you know, like when it's like darkest times, like you're not making a table or a chair or something, you're making a light, you know, and that's so him, and you know, that kind of just sort of observing those little things actually helps as well. Just what we said before, just being really mindful, allowing yourself not to, you know, be consumed by fear and allowing it to be there, because yeah, there were some moments that were really and is still fearful, but at the same time, you know, especially when you see that something is happening to your body or something like that, you know, in terms of like maybe health issues and stuff, like it's easy to drop into that, oh my God, what's wrong? Oh, I need to fix that. And I was like, oh, okay. Like the fear is not helping, you know, to make even some kind of clear decisions, what's next, you know, so out of this coming out now, I think I'm coming out with more clarity and more, yeah, and more intrigued, let's say, of like what's next, you know, because I feel like it was a big like revelation in terms of like some kind of belief systems or things that I had before. And yeah, it's just now I was like, okay, now I'm ready to create again. So it was a bit of hibernation with all of it going on, but like I think I'm coming out of that, and now where it's like, okay, like now clarity is coming back. Now is coming back all this energy of being alive again, let's say it. Because we were joking about it yesterday, how we should call this call. It's like, are you still alive? It's like, yeah, hanging in, alive and kicking. But yeah, it's. I agree with this completely. Like, it's one thing to talk about it, another thing is to experience it. And yeah, it was tough.
And I think this is a very important point, that just sharing these moments and just really reflecting on it and just realizing that this is something that happens to all of us is so important. One of the things that really intrigues me a lot when it comes to you describing your own process, I know that I bugged you with this, but the day I do your human design profile, I think I know what's going to be, but this is interesting just to put this little information here, how we ride the emotional waves, and how much sometimes through emotions, those people who are who have their emotional center defined, they really process life and all kinds of information through the emotions, because emotion is an incredibly strong energy. So that just really made me reflect on this, that it's interesting, right, that sometimes those people who really have this urge to feel deeply, which we all do, but some people really have this emotional roller coaster going on 24/7. It's important to be there and important to acknowledge, and not to become that emotion, but to sit with this emotion. Because in the end of this emotional wave, there is exactly that moment of clarity that you described. So I think this is important to just kind of hold ourselves until we come back to clarity, which we always do, even if we think we don't at the moment of desperation or fear or all those emotions, but it always comes back. And just to really just acknowledge that this is these are moments, and we all struggle, and we all have moments of and difficulties, and it's not so much about being perfect and doing everything perfectly and always finding solution. It's more about, well, knowing ourselves enough to know how to deal with certain situations. And it's what came up to me a lot was how much I sometimes, not because I want to unsee things, but I have this tendency to see the bright side of things, which is good sometimes, but sometimes, you know, it really kind of brings me like huge surprises, because I really was not aware of the darker side of, which is in polarity that we live in, is just normal. So I tend to see the light. And then when the dark comes in, I get really like surprised, like, oh, this is here, I do. And then, you know, then I have to
already.
Yeah, it's like, what? we didn't talk about this. And so this is, again, a big lesson for me that where there is light, that there is darkness, and this is just the way it is. So it was a great reminder to that, and how far you can go, and you need to be aware of your nervous system. You need to be aware how much you can take on. And we actually already touched on this last time. When we were already talking about how much social media you can consume and watch the news and just, you know, socialize in general, and choose wisely the people you socialize with. And this is still very, very true. But yes, I do acknowledge as well that after the second eclipse, the lunar eclipse, it started to come back into a more balanced state, because it was really hardcore. And when you mentioned the Scorpio moon, I have Scorpio moon too. And
well, oh my God. Surprise, surprise. Why I'm not surprised?
Yeah, exactly. And this is the water, right? And this is a lot about having this curiosity and this pull to go to the dark side and see things for what they are, because it's such a strong pull that you cannot really avoid. It's just there. So, and this is something that can be hard, but also I really appreciate this kind of Scorpion energy when it comes to, again, emotions, that we need to visit all those dark emotions as well, as much as we need to see joy and laughter and love and all those other things. So this is very, very beautiful, but I definitely could see also with clients that everybody was working on things. And, well, you know, most of the time it's easier to see in the life of everyone else what's going on. And, you know, when you look at others, you might go like, oh, but this was evident. But when it comes to you, this is not so evident at all. So for me, there were big surprises, for sure. But if it was a good thing that I kind of went into this period more aware. Because it doesn't mean that I created more drama around it. It wasn't that I was expecting something, like I didn't expect shit to hit the fan, but it did. And I at least knew that it was kind of time to, you know, it was also part of the show, that sometimes you need to go through these kind of experiences. So yeah, it was a lot that and this is why when we were joking about how to call this talk today, I was kind of serious about it in a way, or we both were, right? That I just really want to acknowledge everyone who has gone through a hardcore few weeks, that they are still here and they did the work, and it's going to get better. But yeah, it was a big one. And mind you, how much we learned from it. So it's more the invitation to just look back and see what has happened, what has shifted. And all these energies are there for a reason. They needed to be seen and needed to be acknowledged. So here we are. And if you can, the invitation, just because we mentioned it's not using our hands anymore, journaling and writing with our hands, I think it's such an important thing. I find that I really created space for myself to use my hands and to write every day, because I feel that this is really a revolutionary act in 2023, is it? I still remember how to handwrite, you know.
I'm still like old school. I write a lot, like even when I'm taking notes and things like that. Like it's, you know, even when I can do it on my phone, like I still go to the piece of paper and still do it, because I know, first of all, how important it is, but at the same time, it is like not energetically, like using your hands, like this is so, I think it's so much forgotten how, you know, magical that can be in terms of using your own hands, because it is a creation itself. Like you are talking about crafts, like out of nowhere came something, you know, and you did it with your hands.
Yeah.
So in terms of like what we're talking last time about manifestation and things like that, is like making it into a practice of journaling, or don't even, maybe, you know, like some people don't like journaling, and that's okay, but find something to do with your hands, like, and just see how, whether it's baking, whether it's something, you know, like it's there are so many technologies now that can like literally make it for you, but where's the joy in it?
Exactly.
I don't know, like you got convenience, does that bring you joy? Guess sometimes, but like for how long, you know? And it's like we were sharing all these things, remember, like I sent you a picture of, oh, I made a cake, and like we did this and we did that. It's like these are all sort of embodied things that actually do keep you grounded, and this is one of the themes we were talking about last time, and to take it further for the next time. So important, grounding. Oh my God, I cannot stress this enough. You know, like as funny as it is, you know, even if you go for a walk in your local park, take off your shoes for 5 minutes. Like whatever you live, maybe, okay, like it's snowing already, and that's not the best thing to do, like considerably. But like for us, in more sort of like, it really turned the weather here. Like it's going into proper November now. However, it's just like a simple act. Like I cannot wait till tomorrow, because I know I'm going into the woods, into the forest tomorrow. I like to spend the day, you know, with my husband, like doing a little hike and looking at all the mushrooms and things like that, you know, like I'm buzzing. But that just means like I'm gonna get down to, you know, take my shoes off and like remove that rubber between you and the earth, you know, like and that's just something that can shift your energy, your nervous system incredibly fast, isn't it? Like this is something that can work incredibly fast. So grounding, being in the nature, doing things with your hands, little few things like that. And something that you mentioned right before, and I had like a mini regression, not regression, like a memory coming up about that, you know, period itself, especially the northern hemisphere. We are going into the dark season, right? More internal, more going inwards, and sort of sitting with ourselves and like the darkness. And we just had the Halloween. One of the things that I noticed, especially that we see what's happening in you know, this super activated energy of you know, violence and bloodshed and wars and this and this and that happening everywhere. And then I just had this massive like change where, you know, in my culture, I don't know, in your culture, we never actually had Halloween, only after, you know, certain things. Like it was All Saints Day,
Yes.
like the day when you, and it's not about, you know, darkness or sadness or things like that. It's very interesting when you look back. It's actually about light, like the All Saints Day. It's about the light that people who passed over are now in, right? So like they could just say that, you know, it's not a person that went into the darkness because now that person passed over. it actually they pass into the light. So there is that beautiful game of dark and light that is happening, and we say that the veil is very thin, and you know, and you have this. Oh, I'm just getting like shivers all over the place. Hello. Oh my goodness, that was, I don't know why it hit me like that. And so then it came this kind of like, not even like, I think even Halloween probably has like deeper meaning, but when it came into our sort of culture, it was more of a, you know, for the kids and blah, blah, blah. And now, you know, I was just walking on the street and I saw like, you know, parents with two small kids, like one is literally just starting to walk, you know, like stumbling around. And they had these like, you know, makeup on those kids, like blood and, you know, like kind of like rotten eye and things like that. I just looked at it and it's like, do you really, it's not enough?
Yeah.
It's not enough for you to see it on like real kids that are being, you know, murdered and things like that. You need to put a makeup on your kid. Like how subconsciously that affects, you know, it's like all fun, all good, but we are forgetting about subconscious. Subconscious doesn't have these like, oh, you know, that's fun and that's not. Like it's very direct. It's very direct and it's very like, okay, you know, what associations are being created around this now? We can only see later on, but you already see the programming going in. Oh, that's fun, you know, to be in a bloody face. No,
it's
not so
beautiful
really.
that you mention it, because there are two things that came up with this. Number one, in my son's school, they actually sent information about why they don't celebrate Halloween, and it's a very conscious decision there. And it's all about that, and they also say that they don't necessarily fear that they have to scare little children. I also want to share that I really have no idea really what Halloween is about, because I was already kind of an adolescent when it started to become big in Hungary, and I found it was okay to dress up, kind of, that was the only thing, but I never really cared. And then I lived in Mexico and I worked for the Mexican Tourism Board, and then they have Dia de los Muertos, and that's really something that I could really deeply connect with, because the way they celebrate and they honor their ancestors who have gone to the other side, it's a very, very different thing.
Yeah.
And then, so what they do in my son's school is they celebrate the light. It's exactly as you said. So on Friday we are going to go outside somewhere, which will be kind of a surprise, and we will all hold candles, and that will kind of be a symbol for the inner light that is always there, and how we can connect to it. And this is a very important thing.
That's beautiful.
This is really beautiful. And another thing is, when it comes to connecting with this darker part and the winter and the fears and all that, it is important, but it used to be so different. So we went to see. I live in Sardinia, and here in Sardinia we went to the mountains, and we saw these, they call them mamutones, and they are incredible. So they are men mainly. They are dressed up in this hairy stuff, and they carry on them these huge things that they make noise with. And they have these masks that are kind of scary-ish. Yeah, they're scary for children, I think. But there I could really tap into this very, very deep, ancient practice that was really about showing the fear, looking into the face of our fears. But that's a very, very different approach again, because it was a very ancient tradition. It was held by the whole community.
Right.
There were these people making this noise also to kind of scare away, the darkness. So that's again a very different practice. And I'm really, really happy that we touched this, because yes, it's a lot about being aware of the darkness and looking into what's there, but not to recreate more darkness. And this is exactly what, for me, Halloween is about. I could never really, and I would say that even here in Sardinia, the day of Halloween evening, the streets were full of children, dressed up but it's a new thing even here.
Yeah.
And I got very surprised by how commercial it went in such a short period of time. But no, I don't feel Halloween at all, and I never have. But I am very connected this period of the time. Well, obviously the Scorpion moon and the whale's theme; these are all coming together, but from a very different, more
totally.
If you will, pagan or shamanistic point of view, that how much can be worked and how much can be seen and how much can be had, but not from this propagandistic commercial.
Yeah, and it's like this, we can see how commercialized they're getting, all kind of traditions as well for a long time, and obviously that's just one more to add on. But what you said about the candle representing the light and things, like, I don't know if you had this tradition in Hungary, but like we used to go in Lithuania, we used to go to the cemetery, like to visit the graves of your loved ones, and put the candles on. And usually, like if you go during the evening, during the night, when it's like already dark, and you just see this like land of candles just as you approach the cemetery. And it's like it's always been like this kind of like with my grandma, that was very like attuned into the energies as well. It's kind of the moment of calm. It's nothing to do with fear. It's nothing to do with that recreating more of the darkness. Is more of a like, it's calmness, it's togetherness, it's like really like sitting in the peace with the people who are here and now, like sitting with that energy, not necessarily like going and crying over the graves of people who left. Like obviously if you are still in grief and things like that, absolutely, but it's not a day every year to go and kind of like remember and be in pain. And it's more of a kind of being in peace and being in that light. And like even if it's just a tiny little flame, it's still within you. And it's kind of, how can we join more flames together and stay together and be in that? I remember this is as one of my favorite like things to do when I was little, like kind of this time of the year around like All Saints, and like going into this darker season of the winter. And as well, something that we said, I think for the next, especially winter months, and obviously the eclipse energies going forward, is that of, okay, recognition of like, wherever that showed up for you now, the darkness or whatever that you felt, you already dealt with. And here it is again. I just love it. Like in the end, it was like a funny thing, because when I was very little, well, I wasn't very little. I think I was 11, 12 when like I was given a choice. I don't know, I think I told you about it. I was given a choice by my grandma. It's like, will you follow me? Like in terms of like the healing, the natural healing and whatever, like that thing, or you're gonna, go somewhere else. Like you don't want to be taught, you don't want to be like carrying this lineage or whatever. And while I was thinking about it, she said something that, kind of, I made a decision at that time, and she said to me, like, you have to be really careful with like the darkness, because like it's very attractive to you. I was like, okay, like what a 11 years old child like understands about this, like who knows, like, but for me it was like, oh, I better not go there. You know, I better like, don't go there, because if I go this way, the darkness is very attractive and I need to distract myself from that. And this is what I did for the rest, for like many years of my life, you know, like, no, I'm not, I don't want to like know about it. Like, okay, I'm curious, but not so deep. Like, I'm going to study it, but I'm not going to work with this. I'm going to do this, but it's like that all the time until it came the point. And even looking back now, the major shifts that were happening around this time in the past 10 years was just like 10 years ago on that day before Halloween, I was moving to Brazil. I was like, fuck everything. Like,
Wow.
I don't know what's going to happen to me. Like, this is like madness. You know, I'm leaving everything I know behind. Like, my boyfriend at the time, my friends were like, you are mad, you know, like, what the hell? And I just had to do it, you know. It was like, was stronger than me. Like, the pull was like, pa. And then, okay, after this, you know, come back to Europe. Like, around this time, I was also like 5 years ago, was graduating from the RTT and hypnotherapy and all that. And at the same time, moving into the new home where we are today. So it's like these massive sort of cycles just happening. And I remember, like, soon after we moved here, like, we didn't even have like proper like furnished the place and everything, you know. We were just like getting things together. I had this experience where I woke up during the night and like the bathroom is next to our bedroom. I went to the bathroom, and as I was coming out of the bathroom in this empty room, the living room, I saw, like, you know, these figures that when you are children, like lots of children see these sort of dark figures or something like that, you know. Carl Jung has very interesting ideas about that also, but I saw that figure kind of standing there in the corner, and I had this massive surge of like fear, you know, kind of as if I was back in my childhood, and I was like, oh my God, where's my grandma? You know, like the ghosts are here. And as I walked, but I was like, okay, I'm just not gonna like go into it. I'm just gonna come back to my bedroom, and I went back to the bedroom. Hugged my husband. I was like, okay, forget about it. And that night, I had a dream with the same thing that my grandma told me, but in reverse. You know, what she was telling me before was like, you know, just be careful because, you know, you have this massive attraction to the dark and to the dark. And in my dream, I was so scared. I can't remember exactly the dream, but I was really, really scared, still like going through that emotion. But the voice in the dream said like, oh, don't be afraid of the darkness. It's like, you know, it's like a moth because it's coming to you, like to the light, you know. And it's like, damn, it took me like how many years to like shift this perspective, you know. So this is what I felt like coming up a lot during this eclipse season, because it was all that darkness, kind of like darkness, toxicity, all the things that were like obviously, you know, the residue of that massive shift, things that are not integrated yet properly, you know. It's like kind of coming up and saying, well, we are still here. I'm like, okay, that's good, you know, like I'm gonna sit in this grief, and I'm gonna sit in this like pain, I'm gonna sit in this. And this is huge for me, because before I would run away, I would distract myself, I would do anything just not to sit with it, you know. And I think a lot of people are in this transition now, where it's like there is nowhere else you can run. And anyway, like you cannot run from yourself, but just to understand that and kind of shift that perspective into like, okay, you might be attracted to the dark, because you are the light, and because you need that kind of balance and transition between yourselves, like it's always intervened. It's not like you know, I'm just love and light and that's it and nothing sticks to me. It's like, I don't think that's actually true. And perhaps like even looking back at the certain like past life regressions and things like that I experienced, like looking at this, you can have, you know, the visions of yourself or the understanding of yourself that you are both, and both are valid and both are needed. The same with the Scorpio is like, yes, it is a toxicity, but at the same time represents healing as well. So the snake, right, and like it's venomous, but it can be medicine too. So, you know, like poisonous mushrooms, but at the same time, you know, like my grandma was like, okay, somebody got poisoned, I'll give them more poison and they're gonna be fine. You know. Just like the amount needs to be right, the balance needs to be done, it has to be done in a perfect and like that condition, but at the same time, you know, I'm not gonna like give you sugar, I'm gonna give you something that made you sick in the first place.
Yeah,
so
there's a big difference
between,
exactly, there's a big difference between just trying to help with the symptoms or really healing it, and this is exactly what we talk about. And even if we give tools to how to go through these darker times, it's not about forgetting about what's going on, it's just having these moments of calmness that helps us to sustain what is really going on, and that's super, super important.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Yeah.
I felt like, you know, coming out, and there is one comment that one lady wrote. Let me just, I can read it because I thought it was quite significant what she says. So Kathy, she said, I have some, sorry, I can't read with my glasses. I have had some major shifts, or rather solidifying of what I have learned and integrated over the past 2 years. It will be interesting to hear about the post-eclipse energy and what that could mean. So it's again coming, eclipse is what we were saying before, right? It's like that really significant endings and beginnings, right? So something coming to the end and something like the opportunity, the invitation is to begin again with the wisdom that you brought with yourself from that ending, right? So maybe, you know, like that's just a perfect example of these eclipse energies. So if that's like solidifying something that is ending, what next can be, like what can be born out of that, you know, because there is never like an actual ending. It's just a transmutation of the energy, right? So it's like, yeah, here is the end point, but the wisdom that I carry for that, it's gonna bring you something that you didn't have before, right?
It always takes you the next level. And that's so important to know, and sometimes it gives some hope when it's really hard, that these things are not in vain. These things are always there for a reason. Yeah. If we take the opportunity to learn from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's like that, it always comes back to the, you know, perspective of how we are looking at those things. Whether it is, you know, lots of people going through tough time, you know, whether it's personal, whether it's relationships, job situations, apart from, let's say, can't even touch on that, you know, like, you know, people who are actually experiencing all the horror of what potentially can happen. But for those of us who are not immediately caught up in that horror, we have responsibility to have perspective that does include light in it. You know, yes, we are going into the dark season, Scorpio season and all that. And yes, don't expect, you know, necessarily everything just changing dramatically and like going into this beautiful utopia. Not quite yet, I guess. Like I feel this more like that is gonna, I don't know if it's like a right feeling or not, but like the total solar eclipse that is coming in April next year, right? Kind of gives me a bit of a intuitive feeling that this is gonna be like a major breakthrough point. So if we can't do anything else, like let's just put our, you know, focus on that breakthrough point, whether it's something personally that you are expecting to shift, whether it's something, you know, that you wish for the collective and the world, you know, globally. But take this time to really, you know, take care of yourself, take care of immediate people around you as much as you can. And
exactly,
give.
and you know, you don't need to. Sorry to interrupt, but I really just didn't want to forget to say that, you know, this, because you mentioned utopia, and yes, of course, it's not coming yet. But again, does it actually exist, and would it, and would we be aware of it if it existed? So here's the thing: if this utopian state can be reached, can be stagnant, I don't know. But how much can we create on a daily basis that can take us to that state of utopia? And whatever that is for you, if it's lightness, if it's joy, if it's happiness, if it's love, whatever that is, but that can be practiced on a daily basis, even if it's just 1 minute or whatever that is. And this is how we bring in the light, even in the dark moments. And this is so important to always kind of hold this highest timeline, of course, as a vision for humanity if we want to talk about the collective. But what we can do on the individual level is really about just creating that space in our neighborhood. That what can we do, you know, if we want to see peace, really have that peaceful interactions with others. If we want to see unity, just create those moments when we can feel into this unity. So how can we actually harness this energy while we are also going through this darkness?
Yeah, definitely. And another thing that I think it's important to, we were touching on it before because these eclipses were happening in Libra, and you know, it's like sort of balancing relationships. What I also noticed that in this past couple of weeks, what helped me a lot was actually while I was like in this situation that I allowed myself to go in, what helped me a lot is actually be in a safe masculine energy. This was like a very significant, like before, you know, like that was part of me. It was like, yeah, independence is huge for me. Like this is something, but it can be on a scale of like, I don't need any help. Like I'm just gonna do everything myself. And obviously that's not balance, right? It's another kind of dynamic. But I just felt like reconnecting maybe with certain friends that I haven't spoke to a lot, especially male friends, right? And kind of like being that energy. Obviously, my husband is like being hug all the time, you know. So he's like the light bringer and, you know, the very good hug giver. But it's kind of allowing yourself to not separate more, as we were talking more into bringing balance together. So even if you're not in a relationship where that's available, because a lot of people are in a relationship where safety is not available for them, and maybe with your partner, let's say, but is there someone around you in your life, whether it's a friend, whether it's a relative, whether it's someone, if you're a woman and you are dealing with these energies, if there's someone that can offer you that safety as a masculine energy as that energy that you can be your crazy self, but you can still be safe in that energy of like, okay, I see you, go all crazy here, I'm here, just sort of holding it for you, you know. So I don't know how many men can offer that. I think I'm blessed to have a few around, you know, that really helped. And yeah, I think for the next 6 months, this would be one of the biggest recommendations for people, for women, especially those who are looking for more conscious relationships, looking for a partner that is sort of like, they are feeling it's coming around, but like this time I want this to be different. I don't want this to be the same old pattern all the time like my previous relationships. Where can I find safety? Where can I experience in my body? It doesn't need to be my partner yet. Maybe it's a future partner that I'm manifesting, but how can I be safe in this sort of masculine energy together? Start training yourself because it's coming. It's coming for you, you know, and start training your body for the manifestation to happen faster.
Yeah. Thank you so
what
much.
do you think?
Yeah, it was amazing. Thank you.
The last couple of minutes before we finish off, what is your message for this next couple of months while we are still in the energy?
I would really like to stay with that image that we talked about, how to just light a candle in the midst of the darkness and how to hold this darkness and go through it and really just be in it and learn from it, but always just remembering that you always have access to some light.
Yeah, that never goes out, right? And this is as difficult as sometimes gets. Like, yeah, the light is always there. Exactly. And if you can't see it within yourself, someone else can see it in you. And trust them when they do. Trust them when they do. All right, darling, thank you so much for coming in and again talking to me. And oh my God, we're probably going to do it more and more as we go along.
I really enjoy it. So seriously, thank you so much. You bring so much clarity, and I love the way you can feel into stuff intuitively and also be able to kind of verbalize it in a very clear manner. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. You too. Mwah. Love you. Bye.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye, everyone.